Is the Jeep Gladiator as weak as the Toyota Tacoma? Well, good morning, everybody. How are you today? Pretty good here, and that's right. Is the Jeep Gladiator as weak as the Toyota Tacoma? Now, what am I talking about? You know, over on the Rob Motive Tacoma channel, I took a look at the payload capacity of my Tacoma, the 2020 in this trim level. And frankly, I was a little surprised at just how light it is, given the final numbers once you take away all the other weights on the truck. You know, like the added mods, the passengers. Did you know that you have to deduct the weight of your passengers from the stated payload capacity in order to know what it is that you can safely haul, at least per specs of the truck? So I guess what that means is, before you let anybody get in your truck, if you're gonna haul something that's gonna be marginally heavy, you gotta take a scale with you. You know, you gotta have everybody weigh in, write it down, subtract it all out before you let them get in your truck. Maybe that's why this new electric Ford F-150 that's coming out has a scale built in the bed. So you can have everybody pile in and see what they weigh before you take off. But anyway, I took a look at the payload capacity of my Jeep Gladiator, and I have a Sport S. And I kind of compared that to what my Tacoma is. So I was a little surprised in looking at the specs for payload capacity on the Sport S, the automatic versus the manual transmission. There's a pretty substantial difference. If you have a manual transmission in the Sport S Jeep Gladiator, the payload capacity is 1,700 pounds. However, once you throw an automatic into that truck, it drops to 1,105 pounds. That's before you add any weight to it. Like I mentioned, passengers. And did you know that if you add things to it, like side steps, maybe a bed rack, maybe bigger, heavier wheels and tires, although those are on the ground, they shouldn't count unless they're in the bed. But that's going to reduce the payload capacity as well. So let's take a look. Like I mentioned, the payload capacity for my Sport S automatic trim on the Gladiator is 1,105 pounds. The Tacoma, the one right behind me here, is 1,140 pounds. Now, I'm going to deduct from that 1,105 pounds a little bit. I'm going to say that maybe you and your buddy are going somewhere and you're both, kind of beefy guys, couple hundred pounds. We'll just use that as a benchmark, an average number, right? So two guys, 200 pounds, that's 400 pounds, right? So that knocks the payload capacity on the Gladiator down to 705 pounds. On the Tacoma, 740. Now, I used mulch as kind of my medium that I'm going to be hauling, right? Because everybody hauls mulch once in a while maybe, or dirt or whatever, but let's look at mulch. So, 705 pounds of payload. How many bags of mulch can you safely haul? 17. Of course, I'm rounding down because you can't go buy 17 3/4 worth of a bag of mulch, So 17 bags of mulch in the Jeep Gladiator. In the Toyota Tacoma, you get 18. So it's close. I mean, one extra bag. It's a little less work you have to do if you're driving the Gladiator, right? Now, let's say that if you're like me, I usually pick about 25 bags, right? If I'm going to get mulch, it's about 25 bags. I think the most I've ever hauled in the back of my Tacoma was 50. Way overweight, but let's say 25. That means in the Jeep Gladiator, you're going to be overweight by 320 pounds. Now, on the Toyota Tacoma, it would be 210 pounds, right? So I guess that means if you leave your buddy at home, you can safely haul, 25 bags of mulch in the back of the Tacoma. Let's take a look at scoops of dirt, because I've done this a few times myself. You go off to one of those nurseries, right? You want to get a scoop of dirt because your spouse wants to have a nice flower garden or vegetable garden planted, right? So spring has come and it's time to go get yourself some topsoil. So you go to that nursery, and I'm sure you've seen this before. A front loader comes out. That's that little tractor-like looking thing with a big scoop on the front of it. Scoops into that big pile of dirt, rolls up to your truck, and this is when you start sweating, right? At least I do. Because they're doing it from the side, and they're trying to get it all in there, and that bucket is about maybe a little bit longer than your Tacoma, right? Or your Jeep Gladiator. So they pull up there to your Gladiator, you start to dump that thing in, and they're about this close to that front window. I don't know. At first, they start dumping it in, and it kind of trickles out a little bit. But you know at some point, and this all depends on the operator of the equipment, they're going to flip that scoop down, it's going to fall hard, and you see your truck do this. What does that weigh? Well, on average, and this is if it isn't like sopping wet. Obviously, if it's dry, it's less. If it's sopping wet, it's going to be more. But on average, it's about 1,200 pounds. Now, going back to my numbers, because, you know, you got your buddy with you, and he's going to help you shovel all that out, right? You had 705 pounds to give. You just dumped 1,200 pounds in the back of your Tacoma, right? Or your Gladiator, right? Also, looking at the same thing on the Tacoma, you had 740 pounds to give. You put 1,200 pounds in there. So obviously, you are substantially overweight. So what's going to happen? Well, first of all, you should be driving pretty slow on the way back home, and hopefully you have a pretty smooth road so that you're not taking a lot of bumps, because you don't want all that weight bouncing around. Hopefully all that's going to happen is you're going to bottom out your suspension, and you're going to sit on the bump stops back there. If you go slow enough, probably not that big a deal, although it's possible you could break something. I had somebody comment over on the video I did on the Tacoma channel that they were way overweight. So far overweight that the front wheels were barely touching the ground, they said. Wouldn't that have been something to see? Could you imagine that? There's a truck driving down the road like this, and every time they hit a bump, it kind of pops up a little bit, right? You ever seen that video where some guys are loading a great big boulder in the back of a truck? They put the boulder in there and the truck just goes whomp, and then the bed breaks. Horrible experience. You certainly never want that to happen. But I guess as far as the original question, is the Jeep Gladiator weaker than the Toyota Tacoma? Depends on the trim level, what you have. If you have a manual, no, it's not. If you have an automatic, yes, it is. Is it enough to make a difference? Not really. It's a marginal difference at best. Going back to my example, you're talking about one extra bag of mulch. Who cares? And in the real world, like I've done many times myself, do we even pay any attention to that? If I needed 40 bags of mulch, I'd put 40 bags of mulch in the back of the truck and not even worry about it. Where it comes into play, though, is if you ever have a warranty claim. Let's say you just bought that brand new Gladiator, you load it up, and then for some reason you decided to be honest and you told the sales guy who's looking at your busted leaf springs or blown shocks that you loaded it last week with a bunch of dirt. It should have been able to handle that. Don't ever do that. You've just admitted guilt. They're probably going to deny it as soon as you tell them you had a scoop full of dirt dumped in there because you're obviously overweight. Anyway, I just wanted to get on, kind of compare the two, take a look. I know it's a mid-sized truck. It's not meant to haul the space shuttle or anything. You know, you couldn't put it in the back. Might be able to tow it, though. Leave a comment. Let me know what your experience has been. Do you routinely overload your truck? Do you even worry about it when you're going to pick something up? Or you just assume it's a, 1 or 2 time deal? It's not a big problem. I'd be curious to know. Also, real quick, if you're interested, I do have 2 other channels. Rob Motive, all about my 2020 Toyota Tacoma. And Rob Motive Tundra, my newest channel talking about news and gossip and what's going on with the upcoming redesigned Toyota Tundra. Check them out, and if you're interested, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to click that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And do me a favor, smash that subscribe button on the way out. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.